Makki life and secret preaching of Hazrat Muhammad sallahu alaihi wa sallam. After the revelation, Muhammad realized that in order to establish it, he would have to stand against the whole of Arab society, because the leadership of that time had no other way to spread and establish Islam except to destroy it. So first he started spreading the message of Islam secretly among his relatives and friends. The first person to accept Islam at Muhammad's call was his wife Khadija. Muhammad's cousin and homegrown teenager Ali, who was only 10 years old when he converted to Islam, then became a Muslim. To convey the message of Islam, the Prophet held a meeting with prominent people of his clan. No one accepted his ideology in this meeting, only one accepted Islam in this meeting, that is Ali. The third person to accept Islam was Abu Bakr, a close friend of the Prophet. Thus he started the work of spreading Islam in the first stage, and this work continued in complete secrecy. Public invitation. After 3 years of invitations in secret, Muhammad began to preach Islam publicly. The beginning of such a campaign was quite dramatic. Muhammad stood on Mount Safa and called everyone together. Then publicly said, "There is no God but Allah and Muhammad is the messenger of Allah." But this made everyone furious against him. He is despised by most Meccans, but has a small number of followers. Mainly 3 classes of people followed him and converted to Islam: younger brothers and sons of large merchants, people who have been displaced from or have not reached the top of their communities, and vulnerable people, especially insecure foreigners. Facing opposition in Mecca, Muhammad's opponents began to persecute him on several levels, first by creating an atmosphere of incitement and excitement, then by propaganda, sophistry and counterargument. When these also did not work, at one point efforts were made to undermine the propagation of Islam, and a propaganda group was formed to manage it. At the same time, the Arab poets and flatterers of the time were formed into interesting literary and musical groups, and at one point the Quraysh even tried to compromise with Muhammad. But Muhammad did not accept it, because the condition of the compromise was to practice Islam without preaching, or to preach Islam by supporting polytheistic paganism, while calling people to monotheism without idols was the first divine duty of preaching. Emigration to Ethiopia. As violence against Muslims gradually escalated, Nabi sent a number of Muslims to migrate to Abyssinia. From there too the Quraysh tried to bring back the Muslims, although it was unsuccessful due to the then Emperor of Abyssinia, Najashi. Acceptance of important persons to Islam. Then the most important event in the history of Islam was the conversion of Muhammad's uncle Hamza and the Quraysh leader Umar ibn al-Khattab to Islam. Muhammad was loved by his uncle Hamza and loved him like his own son. Abu Jahl treated Muhammad with harsh language in the courtyard of the Kaaba. Upon learning of this incident, Muhammad's uncle Hamza beat Abu Jahl in protest and accepted Islam with Muhammad's support. On his conversion to Islam, Muslim supremacy in Arabia was established to some extent. Abu Jahl's companion, the Quraysh stalwart Umar, also led the opposition to the Muslims. Muhammad always prayed that at least one of Abu Jahl and Umar would accept Islam. This prayer was fulfilled by Umar's conversion to Islam. Because of Umar's special influence in Arab society, his conversion to Islam made the spread of Islam somewhat easier, although the difficult part was still considered important. Nevertheless, Umar's conversion to Islam strengthened Muslim supremacy, and the Muslims, including Muhammad, began to worship publicly with Umar in the Kaaba, having been assured of total protection from Umar. Exile. Thus, when Islam was advancing at a slow pace, the Quraysh of Makkah isolated and besieged Muhammad and his followers, including the Banu Hashim tribe. They were released after 3 years of confinement. Sad year and Taif journey. The year after liberation was a year of sorrow for Muhammad. Because his wife Khadija and uncle Abu Talib died in a very short period of time in this year. During the Troubles, Muhammad became very disillusioned with the spread of Islam in Mecca. Frustrated, he left Mecca and went to Taif to preach Islam. The date of his departure to Taif is disputed. But while preaching Islam there, he was subjected to ultimate humiliation, anger, and ridicule. Even the people of Taif threw their youth behind Muhammad. They beat him to death with bricks and stones. But still he did not give up, rather, he continued to think about the possibility of spreading Islam there. Miraj or Ascension, according to Islamic interpretation, Muhammad traveled one night from Masjid al-Haram in Mecca to Masjid al-Aqsa in Jerusalem. This journey is known as Isra in Islam. According to the narrations of the Holy Hadith Sharif and Sahaba Ajma'in, he ascended from Masjid al-Aqsa in al-Buraq, a special divine vehicle, and attained the presence of the Almighty. During this time he observed heaven and hell and met prophets Abraham, Moses, and Jesus. This journey is known as Miraj to Muslims. According to Islamic sources, no time on earth is believed to have passed during this entire journey. Muhammad's first biographer, Ibn Ishaq, argued that the event took place spiritually, while later rationalist Islamic historians, such as Al-Tabari and Ibn Kasir, argued that Muhammad physically ascended to Miraj. Migration to Medina. At the call of Muhammad, several people in Mecca became enthusiastic about Islam and accepted Islam. They originally came to perform Hajj and were invited to Islam. They swore to Muhammad at Aqaba that they would protect their Prophet Muhammad at all costs and work for the spread of Islam. These oaths are known as the Oath of Aqaba. It was through these oaths that an environment conducive to the establishment of Islam was created in Medina, and once the leaders of the 12 tribes of Medina invited Muhammad to come to Medina by sending a delegation. In Medina and Yathrib, from long ago until about 620 AD, there were wars between the tribes and the Jews. Especially in the Battle of Buach. There was a lot of bloodshed as all the clans took part in the war. From this the people of Medina were able to understand that the principle of taking blood for blood could no longer apply. That's why they need a leader who can unite everyone. It was with this in mind that they invited Muhammad, although many of the invitees had not yet converted to Islam. On this invitation, the Muslims migrated from Mecca to Medina. Finally, Muhammad and Abu Bakr migrated to Medina in 622 AD. On the day of their migration, the Quraysh planned to assassinate Muhammad, although it did not succeed. This is how the Makki era ended. Those who migrated from Mecca to Medina with Muhammad became known as Muhajirin. Madani life of Hazrat Muhammad sallahu alaihi wa sallam, leaving one's tribe to join another tribe was considered impossible in Arabia. But in the eyes of Islam, it is not like that, because in this case, the bond of Islam is considered as the best bond for Muslims. It gave birth to a revolutionary thought in that era. In the Islamic calendar, counting of days starts from the year of Hijrah. That is why AH is mentioned at the end of the Islamic calendar year, which means, after Hijri, establishment of independent state and formulation of constitution, Muhammad went to Medina as a mediator and ruler. At that time the two main parties in conflict were Banu Aus and Banu Khazraj. He performed his duty well. All tribes of Medina signed the historic Medina Charter, which is marked as the first written constitution in the history of the world. Through this charter all bloodshed was declared forbidden among Muslims. It even initiates state policies and creates a sense of accountability among all the tribes. Both Aws and Khazraj tribes embraced Islam. Also mainly three Jewish tribes, Banu Kainuka, Banu Qurayza and Banu Nadir. Including these, a total of 8 tribes signed this charter. By this charter Medina was established as an independent state and Muhammad became its head. The people of Medina who accepted Islam and helped the Muslim emigrants by sheltering them were known as Ansar, helpers. Armed struggle. After the Hijrah, the inhabitants of Mecca confiscated the property of the Muslims who had migrated to Medina. Later, war broke out between the Meccan Muslims. After the revelation of the Quranic verses, Muhammad gave permission to the Muslims to fight with the Meccans. According to traditional accounts, on February 11, 624 AD, while praying at the Masjid al-Qiblatain in Medina, Muhammad received a command from Allah to face the Qibla towards Mecca instead of Jerusalem. After this order, Muhammad started praying towards Mecca and other companions also started praying according to this order. Those against whom war is fought are permitted to fight, because they have been wronged. Allah is surely able to help them. They have been unjustly expelled from their homes only because they say, Allah is our Lord. Had not one faction resisted the other, the Christian ascetics' places of worship, the churches, and the Jewish places of worship and the mosques where the name of Allah is often mentioned would have been destroyed. Surely Allah helps him who helps him, Allah is mighty, mighty. Quran, Surah Hajj, verses 39 to 40, Muhammad ordered several campaigns to conquer Mecca, and of these, the 8th campaign, the campaign of Nakla, achieved a real victory in battle. In March 624, Muhammad led about 300 warriors in a raid on a merchant caravan in Mecca, and the Muslims attacked the caravan at Badr. On learning of this plan, a force was sent from Mecca to repel the Meccan caravan of Muslims. This led to the Battle of Badr. The Muslims won the battle and at least 45 Meccans were killed and 14 Muslims were martyred. Abu Jahl and many other influential Meccan leaders were killed in the battle. 70 people were captured, many of whom were released. Muhammad and his followers considered this victory as their foundation, and Muhammad also thanked a group of angels for this victory. At this time, the Quranic verses were revealed focusing on the rules of governance, the punishment of corruption and the distribution of wealth. This victory strengthened Muhammad's position in Medina and strengthened the morale of his followers. This lessened his opposition and the pagans who were not yet converted were very jealous of the progress of Islam. Asma bint Marwan of the tribe of Aus Manet and Abu Afak of the tribe of Amr ibn Awf hurled insults at the two pagan Muslims. But later they were killed by their own tribe. However, some hadith narrators consider this hadith to be a fabricated and fake hadith. Later most of the members of these tribes voluntarily converted to Islam. Muhammad expelled the Banu Kainuka tribe from Medina, who were one of the three major Jewish tribes in Medina at the time. However, some historians claim that this happened after Muhammad's death. According to al-Waqidi, after Abdullah ibn Ubay spoke on their behalf, Muhammad refrained from executing them and ordered their exile from Medina. After the Battle of Badr, Muhammad also established cooperative relations with several Bedouin tribes to protect his community from the northern part of the Hijaz. Disputes and wars with Mecca. Immediately after the establishment of the state in Medina, its relations with Mecca deteriorated day by day. The Quraysh of Mecca continued to adopt a bellicose attitude towards the destruction of the Medina state. Muhammad took the lead in making peace by coming to Medina and establishing treaties with all the surrounding tribes. In this situation, in 624, Muhammad sent an army of 300 soldiers to intercept a trade caravan in Mecca. Because the caravan was trying to collect weapons in the name of trade, Quraysh succeeded in protecting their caravan. But calls for war to avenge this attempt. In this self-defensive battle, the Muslims were victorious despite being one-third of the Quraysh in terms of numbers. This battle, known as the Battle of Badr, took place on March 15, 624 AD. According to Muslims, Allah helped Muslims in this battle. From this period the armed history of Islam begins. Then the Battle of Uhud took place on March 23, 625. In this the Quraysh were initially defeated but eventually managed to enter Mecca as victors, and the Muslims entered Medina as vanquished due to the weakness of policy at the last moment despite their initial victory. In 627 Abu Sufyan attacked Medina with another group of Quraysh. But this time too the Muslims were defeated in the Battle of Khandak. Encouraged by the victory in the war, the Muslims became a dominant force in Arabia. As a result, Muslims were able to influence many surrounding tribes. Trench warfare, relations with the Jews of Medina, inscription with Muhammad's signature in Edirne, Turkey, but at this time the Jews living in Medina became a threat to the Islamic State. Originally the Jews did not believe that a non-Jew could be the last prophet. That is why they never accepted the ideals of Islam, and when they realized the power of the Islamic State, they realized the need to use force against it. Muhammad attacked one Jewish tribe after each battle. After the battles of Badr and Uhud, the tribes of Banu Qaynuqa and Banu Nadi were expelled from Medina, and after the trench, all the Jews were expelled from Medina. Two reasons for Muhammad's anti-Semitism can be found, one religious and the other political. If you think from a religious point of view, this was the punishment for not accepting the last prophet even though he was an al-Kitab. And politically speaking, the Jews were a threat and a weakness for Medina. That is why they are expelled. Treaty of Hudaybiyah, O Lord. In your name, it is a peace treaty between Muhammad ibn Abdullah and Suhail ibn Amr. They agreed to a truce for 10 years. During said period both parties are safe and neither party shall harm the other party. There will be no secret attacks, but there will be mutual honesty and respect between them. If anyone in Arabia wants to make a treaty or enter into a treaty with Muhammad, he can do so, and whoever wants to make a treaty or enter into a treaty with Quraysh, he can do so too. And if a Quraysh comes to Muhammad without permission, entering Medina, he shall be returned to the Quraysh, but on the other hand if one of Muhammad's people comes to Quraysh, he will not be handed over, returned, to Muhammad. This year Muhammad must withdraw from Mecca with his companions, but next year he may come to Mecca and stay for 3 days, but without their weapons and with their swords sheathed. Declaration of the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. Although the Quran mentions the rules and requirements of Hajj for Muslims, Muslims could not perform Hajj due to the enmity of Quraysh. Muhammad saw in a vision that he was shaving his head for Hajj. Seeing this, he made up his mind to perform Hajj, and in the month of Shawwal in 6 AH he set out on the road to Mecca with 1400 companions for Hajj. But this time also the Quraysh prevented. Necessarily the Muslims set up a base at Hudaybiyah on the outskirts of Mecca. Here a peace treaty was signed between the Muslims and the Quraysh, known in history as the Treaty of Hudaybiyah. According to this treaty the Muslims returned to Medina that year without performing the Hajj. Although most of the terms of the treaty went against the Muslims, Muhammad carried out the treaty. List of Apostles, Da'iyya Kalbi to the Roman Emperor Caesar, better known as Heraclius or Heracles. Abdullah bin Huzaifa as Sami to the Persian Emperor Kisra or Khusro Parvez, Khusra II. Hadad bin Abu Bolta'a to Makakis, the ruler of Egypt, then Alexandria, Amr bin Umayyah to King Najashi of Abyssinia, Salat bin Umar bin Abd Shams to the chieftain of Yamma, Shuja ibn Wahab to the Ghassani ruler Harith, Allah Hazrami to Munjir ibn Sawa al-Tamimi, ruler of Bahrain. None of the rulers accepted Islam except King Najasi and Munjir. Conquest of Mecca. The 10-year Treaty of Hudaybiyah was broken after only 2 years. The Qujaa tribe was an ally of the Muslims, while their enemy, the Bakr tribe, was an ally of the Quraysh. One night, the Bakr tribe ambushed Qujaa. The Quraysh unjustly supported the Bakr clan in this attack by arming them. According to some accounts, some youths of Quraysh also participated in the attack. After this incident, Muhammad sent a letter to the Quraysh with 3 conditions and asked the Quraysh to accept any one of these 3 conditions. The conditions are 3: Quraysh will pay the blood money of the slain of the tribe of Qujay, or they will declare their alliance with the Bakr tribe void, or declare that the Treaty of Hudaybiyah has been abrogated and the Quraysh are ready for war. The Quraysh said that they would only accept the 3rd condition. But the Quraysh soon realized their mistake and sent Abu Sufyan to Medina as an envoy to renew the treaty. But Muhammad rejected the Quraysh's offer and began preparing to attack Mecca. In 630 AD, Muhammad left for Mecca with a large army of 10,000 companions. That day was the 10th day of the month of Ramadan of the 8th Hijri. Mecca was conquered fairly unopposed, except for a few scattered skirmishes, and Muhammad entered in triumph. He announced a general amnesty for the people of Mecca. But 10 men and women were out of this pardon. They vilified Islam and Muhammad in various ways. However, some of them were pardoned later. On entering Mecca, Muhammad first entered the Kaaba and destroyed all the idols there. Seeing the prosperity of the Muslims and being impressed by Muhammad's forgiveness, most of the Meccans accepted Islam. The event of this victory is specially discussed in Al-Quran. Arab victory, main articles, Battle of Hunain and Battle of Tabuk. After the conquest of Mecca, Muhammad saw the possibility of an attack by the Hawazin community. They had twice as many soldiers as Muhammad's army. The Banu Hawazin were the old enemies of Mecca. The Banu Saqif, inhabitants of the city of Taif, adopted an anti-Mecca policy and joined the Banu Hawazin. Muhammad defeated Hawazin and Saqifs in the Battle of Hunain.